freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And joining me to break it all down, Nejad is here. Sia, welcome in.
If I may, and thank you, Rick. We go into golf. We got another, I didn't do the math, 29 weeks, probably 28 weeks consecutively.
At least.
And we're coming off the playoffs yesterday, the NFL playoffs. And can I just say, and I tweeted about this yesterday, but can I just say, I love the purity that is golf from a betting and DFS standpoint, because there's no officials, there's no controversy, there's no human error. You are betting on a golfer in DFS or in the betting market, and it's on that person. And therefore it's on you. You can be accountable for the guy that you picked. And so I am actually relieved I get to endure that for the next 30 weeks.
Greg DuCharme is here. Greg, I think that is very sweet. Sia is so sweet, thinking that golf is pure and that these guys are taking the best possible drop and they're not looking up into trees with binoculars to see if their golf ball's in there. That was so cute. There was so much hope in that opening.
There are outliers. There are always outliers.
Always outliers. But I love the accountability aspect. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I mean, the buttons you click are on you. We're here to help you do that. And hopefully you click a lot of the buttons that we recommend. They work out many times. They don't work out many times, but ultimately you're making the decision. So you got to have some good reasoning behind it. You got to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And when you take that personal accountability, I tell you, it works. So I love what you said there, Sia.
We've had a busy day. We were actually 2 minutes late, Sia, because we were comparing sleep habits to see if any of us could get better sleep or more of it. Did we come out successful or not from that conversation?
I mean, kinda. We'll see. There were some suggestions outlined. I may take you up on a couple of those.
If you have any sleep suggestions, this is now a sleep pod. Throw them in the chat right now. Also, Greg, how about this for a professional tease? We recorded something earlier that I cannot tell you what it is, who it was with, or when it will be released, but we did it earlier today.
Wow. That is quite a tease.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure what to look forward to.
Yes.
Although I do know. So I know exactly what to look forward to, but I won't share it here.
That's right. No, we'd have to bleep you out and kick you out of the room if you share it right now. This week, thankfully, the final course rotation of the season. I've been saying that all week. That is right, isn't it? I can't think of another one.
I think it's right.
Because once we get to Florida and it's the Florida swing, and then it's summertime and you have the hour. I've been saying that. I'm pretty sure it's correct.
Yeah, I think the next one is not till like RSM or something along those lines.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah. So I mean, that's next season.
Right.
So I think this season we are officially done with course rotation, which is exciting.
After this one.
After this.
Pebble Beach. This is my website, rickrungood.com. That's where I'll show you all the stats and everything else for the rest of the show. Sia, not last week, but the week before, the American Express was a 3-course rotation. That's what we're getting here. Again, we're getting Pebble Beach, we're getting Monterey Peninsula, we're getting Spyglass Hill. 1 round for every golfer at each of those 3 courses. 54-hole cut. Everybody goes back to Pebble Beach. The noteworthy items, these are some shorties, right? I'll flip through the scorecards here, but the longest of the 3 is Spyglass Hill at 7,041 yards. The short guys have a chance.
Absolutely, the short guys have a chance. So it's going to be really interesting to diagnose this in terms of what we want to pay attention to. But another thing to point out is that Pebble is going to be the only one with shot link. So Monterey and Spyglass don't have shot link. That's right, guys? We still don't have shot link at Monterey and Spyglass.
Historically, that is correct, yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess the focus is on Pebble, but Pebble's only going to be half of the 4 rounds. So it's just something to consider. But I like the fact that they're all short, and I think they all kind of call for similar things. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we're going to a different course.
Pebble Beach specifically, Greg, because that is the place we'll get the shot link. That's the place we'll get the two rounds at, and specifically the final round. Very small greens, maybe if not the smallest greens, the second smallest greens on the PGA Tour schedule, and you'll notice it with some of these shots that come in. There's not a lot of wiggle room out there.
No, I mean, think about it. The one that sticks out to me as being just a tiny green is the 8th. I suppose 7 is a pretty tiny green.
7's pretty small.
6 is pretty small. So they are small greens. 11 is tiny. Man, there are some hole locations on 11 that are just, it is so narrow there. But there's a lot of wedge opportunities. And like you said, the short guys have a chance. You can hit a lot of drivers if you want. You don't have to. And it's not really one of those places where you have to hit it to the corners of dog legs, even though it's shorter. But there are some bunkers and some things to consider. So you get some decisions off the tee. And then you got to be really precise into the greens. And should you miss them, you end up with bunkers and rough around the greens. And you can find yourself with some really tricky golf shots in the short game area. But the other thing about this place is similar to what we saw last week at Torrey Pines. There's quite a few short putts missed. So that makes short game even more challenging. You hit a pitch shot, maybe when we get to the Florida swing on Bermuda greens and you hit it to 4 feet, there's a pretty good chance you're going to make that. But there is some real work to be done from 3 feet and out on these greens. There's a lot more break. There's some bumps and things like that with the POA greens. So it's a good test, despite the fact that all 3 courses are pretty short.
West Coast POA is no joke from 3, 4, and 5 feet away. The other thing, Sia, before we move on to the cheat sheet, and Greg already mentioned this, this is kind of a wedge fest, right? You get a lot of wedge opportunities into these greens, way more from some of the shorter ranges than the tour average. I'm not a huge fan of like the 75 to 100 yard buckets, but I think this week that's the week to use it, right? You see on the course key stats, highly correlated to success, approaches from 75 to 100 yards, approaches from 50 to 125. That's kind of how Tom Hoagie took apart this place last year. It's just go get yourself a wedge number and hit your wedges close.
Yeah, and it's a big point of emphasis for me in this one. And to your point, I know how much you love buckets, and that's loaded with sarcasm, of course. But maybe, and I don't know how people want to run their models, but maybe 75 to 100 isn't the one to run. Maybe it's 50 to 125. Maybe it's 75 to 125, 75 to 150, however you want to run it. But perhaps something larger than 25. And I noticed on your on the metrics there, you had the 50 to 125. So yeah, that's going to be an emphasis for me. I'm going to look at approach, but I'm also going to break it down sort of in that 75 to 150 range as well.
Yeah, the 50 to 125 was one of the more highly correlated stats for this course compared to success. Okay, we are going to jump over to the cheat sheet. We're going to start talking some names, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. 4 golfers in the $10,000 range. Jordan Spieth, 10,600. Victor Hovland back in action, 10-3. Matt Fitzpatrick, 10-1. And that man, the defending champion, Tom Hoagie, a flat $10,000. This is fun, Greg. These are some good names at the top and a little bit different, right? Fitzpatrick playing, Victor. This is an event that he doesn't always play. So this is interesting.
Yeah, Victor, we've seen at Pebble twice, once in the U.S. Open, once in the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Jordan, obviously a regular here, and Tom Hoagie has been rather regular as well.
Do you know where Victor won his U.S. Amateur?
Pebble Beach?
That is correct.
Yeah, so definitely a nice history here. He played really well at the U.S. Open here as well with the T12 finish. So it's a great little group up here on top. And I do think, to break it down a little bit, I think all 4 guys are playable. I have my concerns about Jordan Spieth. I know I love Jordan here. And I think he's almost one of those horses for courses locks. Right. It doesn't really matter what his form is when he comes in here. I like Jordan here. So I'm not saying stay away from Jordan by any means, but just looking at some of his proximity numbers heading into this week. I mean, he's hitting a lot of greens this year, but he's not really gaining strokes approaching the green. He's not hitting it very close. I want to say he's 211th in proximity to the hole this year. So that's a worry, but he is one of the best wedge players in the world. So Jordan is playable. I happen to have concerns. And when I look at this range, I don't like using this as a get right game for the top price player. That just there's something that doesn't sit right. And then you go down just a couple of players to Matt Fitzpatrick, and this is not a get right game for Matt Fitzpatrick. Matt Fitzpatrick is right, and he's been right all along. So it's hard for me to play Jordan when Matt Fitzpatrick's sitting there, Tom Hoagie's sitting there, who are my two favorite plays in this range. And in the 6K range, we have some weakness, which we'll get to later. But if I'm trying to avoid that 6K range at all costs, it may be worthwhile to avoid a Jordan Spieth. And perhaps you can fit him in as well. But I think there's a lot of value in getting Matt Fitzpatrick in your lineup. And look at what he's done on the greens, right? Look at what he's done off the tee. He's automatic with the driver. He's a driving cheat code. And he doesn't get talked about as one of the best drivers of the golf ball in the game with Rahm and Rory and all those guys. But he's averaging 305 off the tee this year. And he's averaging like 67% of his fairways. It's a lethal combination. And for a guy that's not that long on the PGA Tour, the last time he lost strokes off the tee was at the match play, which is questionable in and of itself.
Yes, it is.
Before that, you could go back to the player. So it's not really a huge difference, but you're almost a year out from Matt Fitzpatrick losing strokes off the tee. And the putter isn't really much of a different story. He's inside the top 20 on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting. The guy is so complete. And I think this is a great spot for a Matt Fitzpatrick win even.
Matt Fitzpatrick's the best player in this field, and he's the third most expensive player in this field.
I agree.
Yeah. Last 50 rounds, Matty Fitzpatty, 1.28 strokes gained per round. The only guy gaining at least a stroke per round and doing it across the board, all four major strokes gained categories. Very, very well-rounded when you get on three different golf courses. I like that. Sia, let me show you something here. Because Jordan Spieth, it's a hefty tag. 10,800. 10,008 or 10,006? 10,006. It is the most expensive that he has been since right here. Where was it?
Valera?
I thought I had one where he was 10.8. 10.4, 10.8.
Yeah, 10.8. It's right there. It's the BMW.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And then the week before that, he was Memphis. That was the example I was looking for. So basically, he has not been more expensive than this since the 2021 FedEx St. Jude. Look at his form leading into that event. That is like 17 top 20s out of 19 with a win and a bunch of top fives, a bunch of podiums, green all across the board. He's ball striking the heck out of it. He's putting like crazy. That is not the Jordan Spieth that we have right now.
No, it's totally right. I mean, what we just looked at was the Jordan Spieth, or I should say the Jordan who won all those championships with the Bulls. What we're seeing right now is the Jordan who tried to play for the Chicago White Sox. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. That's what we're seeing right now. And so for me, and I totally agree with Greg's assessment, unless somehow he's going to be super low owned, which of course he's not because people deem him a horse for the course. It's one of those situations where, do I want to get the get right spot at the most expensive golfer? And the answer to that is an emphatic no for me. I mean, I kind of hate this range. There's two guys that I like. Ironically, the guy I like the most is the guy that's probably the least talented, but perhaps the best course fit, and that's Tom Hoagie. You guys know I'm trying to be president of the Tom Hoagie fan club each time he's in a tournament. But
how's that going?
Not well so far. I had him in the one and done 2 weeks ago, and it didn't pay huge dividends. But we can get to the one and done later. By the way, thanks, boys. Thanks for giving me the out. I do appreciate it. I'm just saying. We'll get to that later. But here's the thing.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I like Tom Hoagie quite a bit. I mean, not just because he's a defending champion. If you look at those proximities that we talked about, and Rick, I think you already said this, he's excellent. Like, he's just going to be comfortable at this course. Before the first place finish, he was 12th place. The thing about Matt Fitzpatrick that I don't like, and maybe you want to back test this or back check this on Rick Run Good. You don't have to do it now, but those proximities that we're interested in, he's not rating out super well. And because I'm putting such an emphasis on that, and because he's such a great putter, and I think POA can lend itself to some randomness, I'm just not super interested in Matt Fitzpatrick. Part of that is my bias because every time I play him, he doesn't play very well. That's just kind of my thing. It's a circumstantial thing. But for me, it's Tom Hoge and it's Victor Hovland. The one thing about Victor Hovland that scares me is with these small greens, I wonder about the around the green game. Is it back for Victor Hovland? He's been okay lately, but man, these greens are so small. The wind is going to be up certain days. I'm sure we're going to see some bunker play from Victor, some just general around the green game play. And it does worry me a bit, but it's Hoge and Hovland for me. And then I move on.
If you like the buckets, Hoge is top 30 on tour. So in this field, significantly better than that. Top 30 on tour from 50 to 75, 75 to 100, 125 to 150. And from 100 to 125, he's third. So that is like, that's what I like looking at when you've got like 125 yards worth of goodness all around it in every direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at it, and then you look at him and he passes the eye test of being able to flush the wedges. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And real quick, because I looked at the weighted stuff too, not with respect to the proximities, but with respect to Tom Hoge on Rick Run Good, clicking on that weighted, I think is a huge help, first of all. But he's last 36 rounds, he's 5th weighted tee to green, he's 1st weighted approach, and he's 1st weighted greens in regulation. Give me that all day.
Okay, I got a question here. Because I look at Hoge every week too. Typically, I loved looking at Hoge last year when he was a 6K guy or a low 7K guy. Even when he got up into the 8s, he certainly earned that spot. But the iron play was a potential thing. But are we seeing right now great iron play, but it's not really leading to the results?
Finished third of the Tournament Champions.
He did. He gained 10 shots approaching the green,
which is not that uncommon for him.
Yeah.
Also, this is the least talented field, relative to the last 2 tournaments. There's way less talent in this one than the American Express and the Sony.
All right,
and the Century.
I see what you're saying. I just sometimes I look at guys and their strengths, and when their strengths are strong, do the results match? So, do you use someone's strength to, tout them or play them when their strength isn't necessarily the thing that leads to great results? Do they need something else? So is there something with his putting, which has been fine, or his driving accuracy, which has been very, very fine as well, I would say. Is there something else that he needs in order to really perform well? Now, Century Tournament of Champions says no, he can do it just on iron play. But does he need that? Does he need another one of those?
Yeah, he needs to gain like 2 strokes putting.
Right.
2, not a ton. 2.
Okay.
And I don't know how much you guys are emphasizing around the green gameplay, but that can be his Achilles heel a little bit. So I mean that would be an argument against.
I do think it's important. I really value it.
Yeah, me too.
Small. Are you thinking that, Greg, because small greens equals more missed greens?
Yeah. Weather as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Spyglass Hill is not an easy golf course. I think it was 16th most difficult on tour last year. They're kind of in the 30s, so maybe slightly easier than normal, but very short. So there's a lot of challenge in this golf course. Distance just isn't one of them.
Right.
So, I mean, the greens are hard to hit. And when you're Tom Hoge and you're extremely aggressive into flags, Victor Hovland the same way, you allow for some misses of greens, which is okay, but you got to lean on short game a little bit. I do like rough around the greens for guys like that, especially Hovland. The bunker play would worry me, but it's not like we have runoff areas all over the place. And that helps. That is the one thing where I think short game's really important here. I don't know how important short game stats are here, because you can, I think with when you have rough around the greens, it helps out the guys that struggle with short game.
I can tell you, as someone who struggles with short game, that is absolutely correct. It does. The $9,000 range, I think the 9s are just as big as the 8s, maybe bigger. Seamus Power, Andrew Putnam, Matt McNeely, Justin Rose, Matt Kuchar, Denny McCarthy, Keith Mitchell, Joel Damon. Sia, I'm just going to pass this tier right over to you and ask you who we should play.
I think you can start your lineup if you want in this 9K range. And that's not exactly like, I'm not just like blowing up the board here. But I think you can start with Seamus Power. I love the recent form. I really like what he's done here over the last 3 years, a 38th, a miscut, and then a 9th place finish. But it's really the recent form. I think the game is kind of coming back for him. And he checks a lot of the boxes for me here as well. Now, if you look at like the last 36 rounds or last 50 rounds, it's not going to look good for Seamus Power. But if you just lower the sample size, because we've seen the uptick in his play, last 16 rounds, he's been elite. And on shorter courses, I have him rating out. When I put that filter on, I have him rating out pretty well as well. So I do like Seamus Power. The other two guys that I have my eye on.
Hang tight on Seamus real quick. So, yeah, he's actually been, I think he's been pretty good, right? So he wins in Bermuda. He had the back-to-back top fives to end the year. Okay, at the Tournament of Champions, nothing to write home about. He played in Abu Dhabi 2 weeks ago, gained 6 strokes on approach, lost nearly 5 with the putter. That's not something he does pretty frequently. And then you're right. I don't have it in front of me, but like courses, like short courses, 7,100 yards or fewer. He's like the best player in this field on short courses.
Right. Absolutely. And so,
also, to the way it rates out. I mean, you got a first and a third that didn't count. There's no shot link data at those venues.
Point.
Also,
so I think that really probably affects it.
The other thing is anecdotally, he was like 5 shots clear after 36 holes here last year. Right.
Yes.
I mean, that you could argue that was a disappointment, but I think it was a T9 at the end of the day. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty smitten on Seamus.
Yeah. I like Seamus. Another guy I like is Andrew Putnam at 9,700. I wonder how popular he's going to end up being because he does kind of check every box, but then on the other hand, there's a lot of guys in this 9K range you can play. And Andrew Putnam's never really been a sexy play. Like same with Matt Kuchar, who's at 9,400, who I kind of like, but I think Andrew Putnam's a little bit more exciting for me there. But again, around the green, the proximities I'm looking for, greens in regulation, all those types of things. Putnam checks every box there.
Can I tell you that every time I don't play Andrew Putnam and he gains 10 strokes putting and someone tweets me Andrew B. Putnam, it drives me crazy. And then I played him recently and he gained a bunch of strokes and I was running around the house like Andrew B. Putnam. It's like it's like the most annoying guy in like on the basketball court, but you want him on your team instead of like everybody else. You know what I mean? It's like it's so annoying, this guy.
Patrick Beverley. That's who you just described.
Exactly right. Andrew Putnam is the Patrick Beverley of golf. That is the only comp those two will ever have together.
And for the record, these metrics don't really like scream at me. I mean, I kind of hate it that it's just short game with him, but again, he's been good here. We've seen him pop. His recent form is very good. So I'm okay playing Andrew Putnam. The last guy I'll mention at 9,000 is Joel Dahman. Again, another guy in the fall swing who was really, really good. He hasn't played much lately. I think he just had a kid. I'm not exactly sure.
Baby.
Right. So strokes gain narrative, however you want to twist that one. I don't know when the child was born. So I can't really evaluate how much stress he's under and how much time he's been away from his golf game. So that's something to consider. Like that's something to actually consider. I don't know how much he's actually been playing over the last month or so, but with that said, the history here is great and his fall swing record has been great. Do I want to play 9,000 for Joel Dahman? Usually no, but in this field, he's a guy that will go after pins too. And so I don't mind Joel Dahman.
You got to see the baby. I think it was Thursday the 19th.
Oh, so recently.
11 days ago, according to Yahoo.
All right.
Strokes gain perspective, Greg.
Yeah, that will change your perspective for sure. But there's a lot to like about him. You're talking about tied 6th last year, tied 14th a couple years ago as well. So that record's pretty strong. I love where his game was in the fall. I don't know how much that'll affect it, but I think it's a really good course fit. So he was one of the names I wrote down as well. I like the Dahman play, but there's one that I'll add. Damon. It's Joel Damon.
Yeah, my bad.
But, I was gonna say I was like, did Greg just like what? Greg just like sucked me into a black hole. I didn't know what happened there.
Damon.
Thank you. I
Damon.
thought I was the yeah. Okay. Because it rhymes with Gehman. He's the only player on tour whose name rhymes with mine.
Oh, is that true?
Well, I assume.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So I got a couple thoughts. Seamus Power I like. Don't love. I'm much more comfortable paying 9,800 for Seamus Power than I am 97 for Andrew Putnam. Even though I like Andrew Putnam's game, I think it makes sense. It's a very strange range for me, where I don't have a ton of confidence in it. But there are two other guys who I'm interested in. One, Justin Rose. I think there's something kind of brewing with Jay Rose. This veteran player who has done very well at Pebble Beach in the past. He's comfortable leaning on that short game, comfortable leaning on the putter, but the ball striking's kind of coming around a little bit. It's a lot paler, which means those numbers are getting closer and closer to zero.
Paler.
Yeah. But look at the results. It is pale. I mean,
I know that's a great. I've never considered. That's a great way to describe it.
Everything's pale with it.
Yeah, it's like nothing's cool, nothing's good, but nothing's bad.
Nothing. It's all the way across the board. And so, he's close with the driver 1 week, but not quite. Loses a little bit, but makes up for it with a little gain in putting, and everything is kind of working. Everything is close. And then I look at the results. And you go, the two events he's played this calendar year, tied 26th, tied 18th. He's starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm. This is the third week in a row now that he's playing. And I like the trend that Justin Rose is on. And I do feel like with Matt McNeely sitting right there, with a Denny McCarthy who can get popular at times, I feel like Rosie may be kind of left out. And I think, I don't know about you, Sia, but I feel like McNeely's going to soak up a lot of ownership.
Yeah, I mean, he was a fade for me when we did our early edge show with Jonathan Coachman and Patrick McDonald last Wednesday. In that show, we do a lot of betting stuff, but we pick 3 DFS players to play. Homo was one of mine, by the way. All 3 made the cut, but the fade was Matt McNeely because I just knew he was going to be popular last week. And if it's the same this week, I'm not playing. I put Matt McNeely in you remember a couple of years ago when Harold Varner III would be really popular in, let's say, the 7K range? I understand it's a different caliber of player perhaps, but I'm never going to play that guy. I'm never going to play Brian Harmon popular. And it's the same thing with Matt McNeely. I'm out on that.
Well, McNeely's got all the Pebble Beach ties and the great results, and he's playing the best golf of his life, and everybody's going to want to play. If I were looking at this, I love Matt McNeely, right? I've probably bet him and Aaron Wise. I bet every week, but this is a guy who is 100% reliant on the putter. If I just saw this stat profile and didn't know the name, I'd be terrified of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'd never bet on it.
Never.
Right.
But then I look at him, I'm like, well, he's fit and he's going to Pebble Beach and
getting longer.
Yeah, I like the rest of he's getting good. He's okay. He's not
a smart guy, works on it and works hard on it.
He can fly a plane. He can do all that. He can do everything.
So I guess my whole point in this is I feel like McNeely is going to suck up a lot of that ownership away from Justin Rose.
Yeah.
And I think Rosie, this is a place where he could really contend. So I love him. And then the other one that Sia did not mention, who I'm very interested to get your thoughts, but Keith Mitchell. Keith Mitchell is a great driver of the golf ball. Typically, I like to play him on golf courses that are a little more challenging, where great driving is rewarded. We've talked about that a lot in the past, Rick. Yeah. But he came and tied 12th here last year. He has a tied 32nd as well. So he has put together some good tournaments here. And I really like the way he's swinging. I like the way he's hitting the ball. And I think he's kind of gotten his season off to a good start as well. So I feel like you're going in a little early on a Keith Mitchell. But I'm okay with that this week based on this profile.
I generally like that we're starting to see a little more ceiling out of him. The T9 in Houston, the T22 at the American Express, because he had that stretch where he was stuck in only between 35th and 60th. That's all you were ever getting out of him. And it's
frustrating.
It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. So I generally get Keith Mitchell wrong, but I am happy to see that. Yeah, he obviously drives it well, and there's a little more upside that he's tapping into as of late. Let's continue this conversation. We'll go to the 8s, the 7s, and the 6s, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Before we jump into this, Sia, now it's the time for the one and done conversation. There has been so much one and done drama this year, from Mark sneakily changing off of Xander Schauffele to Sia wondering or claiming he got his pick in time, or then saying, well, the deadline is arbitrary and made up. Long story short, Sia, we've ruled in your favor. We accepted your pick from last week, and you got $200 and something thousand from Jason Day.
Well, I do appreciate it. And for the record, the court reporter, if they could just make sure this is on the record, I never maintained that I got my pick in on time. I maintained that the time of 8 a.m. in the morning on Tuesday morning, when the tournament is already just, a one day early in so many unorthodox circumstances, that was not only arbitrary, but there was no attempt at getting my pick prior to that 8 o'clock show.
Except on Monday.
Thank you. Greg is the witness. Exactly right. Greg is the witness that on this show, I said, we are going at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. You have to have your pick in. Greg said, absolutely. Doing it right now. Sia said, I'll get it in. Never did.
Yeah. So, I'm willing. Go ahead.
No, Greg, here's what I'm going to say. So last year, and this isn't on Troy, but last year, anytime somebody didn't have their pick in, you would get a text from that person. And Troy usually does that. But because, and by the way, that happened to you guys too. So let's stop pretending that I was the only one that got reminder texts.
My producer didn't remind me to get
No, it's not. But it's not about Troy. I wouldn't expect him to remind me at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time because it's such a ridiculous and arbitrary time.
It's not arbitrary. It's what time the mega preview pod is.
No, it's arbitrary because that's when you chose to set the show because you were driving to Pebble Beach.
I agree.
That's arbitrary.
I agree that it was based on my travel, which is why I felt bad. And we accepted it because it was still 24 hours before the thing. But it's not arbitrary. It's when the mega preview pod is, and you were reminded on Monday. But.
Yeah, and there's a purpose behind that, right? You don't want to have people watching and waiting and deciding based on what they saw.
I'm doing it for the fans. Right.
I mean, this needs to be a level playing field. So we got to maintain that deadline. But there's one thing that I learned before the show today. Had I known, may have affected my kind ruling to Sia. And I'm not arguing it now. There's no takesy backsies here. But Sia mentioned that he sleeps in as often as he can. And I think this quote unquote arbitrary deadline is really just another way of saying too early. Yeah. I wasn't awake yet.
That's absolutely accurate. That is in my favor. I feel like you're arguing in my favor as opposed to against me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are we going to just accept? I guess this is the grace period. So laziness is accepted for now, but it's over from here on out.
Who was the pick?
It was Jason Day.
Jason Day. I couldn't remember who it was. Jason Day. He got 220 something thousand.
I think 6 of us played Jason Day.
Yeah, everybody played Jason Day. Yeah, it was a lot of chatter for everyone who played Jason Day.
Yeah.
Except Patrick and I. I don't know if you guys know, we played Max Homa last week.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about it on Sunday a little bit, Kyle and I.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I don't know. It's understandable. Hotel internet is arbitrary.
It's arbitrary. It's all arbitrary. The $8,000 range is available right now from Taylor Pendrith at 8,900, Thomas Dietrich at 88, Alex Smalley at 87, Ben Griffin at 86. And we rounded out with Kisner Burmey, Taylor Moore, David Lipsky, Trey Mullinax, Eric Van Rooyen, Nick Taylor. Sia, correct me if I'm wrong. That's a pretty big 8K range, right? Or small 8K range. Why does it feel so different to me?
I mean, it seems about right. Maybe on the touch on the small side. It's a good question.
I don't know.
No, I think that's about right, to be honest with you.
Right. Let's spend our money.
This is a range where, just like last week, I ended up sort of skipping the 8K range in large part. Like that's where Jason Day was. It turns out I didn't have a lot of Jason Day because I just decided to go, 9Ks, 10Ks, and then go down to 7K. I think I'm going to end up building like that as well. But I probably will have a lineup or two with Ben Griffin in it. He has no experience here, and I don't know what you all think about whether or not that sort of factors in. I do think that matters, but I love how he's playing and the way he's rating out with the things I'm looking at for this tournament. It looks really good for Ben Griffin. I know you're pulling him up now.
Ben Griffin might not only be the best Griffin in the field, Lanto, he might also be the best Ben in the field, in which there are a lot of them. 5 straight events gaining off the tee. 7 gaining on approach. He can get hot with the putter. He's on TikTok. This guy does it all.
Oh, he's on TikTok. That's news.
It's mediocre on TikTok, but it's okay.
I wrote down Ben Griffin as well. And this ball striking just speaks consistency to me. It speaks reliability to me. The results have followed it to a degree. And it's very easy to see which levers he pulls to relate to that finishing position. So if he gains 4 strokes putting, he's probably going to finish inside the top 20. If he loses a little bit putting, it's probably going to be around 30th. And it's very clear to see because he's so reliable tee to green. And I love playing reliability like that. And I think it's a really fair price. So I wrote him down too.
Go ahead. See it.
No, I was going to say, so Ben Griffin, there's not much else I like. I do like David Lipsky. I think the problem with David Lipsky at 8,200 is he's going to come out on top on most models, I think. And when people, not on top, like literally number 1, but he's going to be way up there if you go back, let's say 24, 36, 50 rounds. And in that case, I wonder at 8,200 if he's going to end up being popular. If not, first of all, if he's popular and you play cash games, I think he's a great cash game play. But if he's super popular, I'm obviously not going to play him. But I think 8,200 for David Lipsky is more than fair in this field. So he's the other guy I'm looking at. One other guy to mention, I just want you to bring it up maybe after we look at David Lipsky, is Eric Van Rooyen. For some reason, he was sort of high up in my model, and I don't think anybody's going to play him. And I just want to see what we're looking at here.
Was your model last 4 rounds? Because then it would be very, very good. He was great. He was great at the American Express T6. He actually made the cut at the Alfred Dunhill. That was a European Tour event in mid-December. Struggled a little bit in South Africa. And the end of his 2022 wasn't great, but maybe finding something here. That T6 at the American Express was his best result since a year, for a full calendar year. Desert Classic of last year. That was last week, a year ago.
So, and I'll tell you, when he did show up high in my model, I should have probably qualified it. It was when I had the shorter courses filter in as well. So that's maybe something to look at with Eric Van Rooyen.
Okay, Greg, how else can we allocate our $8,000 in this area?
I mentioned that I like Ben Griffin. Another guy I really like, and this I believe to be a horses for courses play. Nick Taylor played really well at the Sony Open just a couple of weeks ago. He's obviously a winner here as well. But he finished tied 14th last year, tied 39th the year after his win. He also has another T10 here as well. I think this is a great spot for Nick Taylor, and I'm willing to play him. It's been, except from last week, it's been some really good stuff with his iron play. So there is some, data behind just, he plays well at Pebble Beach. I think his game is rounded into form as well.
Yeah, if you're like me who played Nick Taylor in his last start, the American Express, and he missed the cut, I think you got to give him one more chance because he still has 3 top 20s this season. 2 of them are top 7s, including 2 starts ago, the Sony. And as you mentioned it, I mean, I had the results up. I mean, he's been great at Pebble, and he's been great at this event. So I think if you gave him a chance at the American Express like I did, you got to give him one more go. And even if you didn't, you probably zigged while everybody else zagged, and you now have a chance to get Nick Taylor at a pretty decent spot.
Right. And we talked about him heading into the American Express as well. And I remember you saying, Rick, this is Nick Taylor kind of season.
That's what I said.
Actually, it might have been the Sony. It might have been before the Sony.
Maybe.
Anyway, I think he could be a really good play. Eric Van Rooyen, we did talk about before the American Express, although we kind of backed off of it. And the only reason I remember bringing him up because I was curious about his talent level versus the results we've seen and having a little bit of time off. And I think that really did end up showing through, but I still feel very uneasy about it. So I'm willing, but it's not comfortable. I prefer Nick Taylor over him.
Just real quick, Greg, on that. I think the main reason to bring up EVR is as a pivot, because people will play. It's not like Nick Taylor is going to be super popular. People will play Nick Taylor. They're going to play maybe a little bit of Brandon Todd. David Lipsky is going to be popular. Nobody's playing EVR. So I think it's a good game theory play at the very least.
Yeah, I would take it on that merit. I got one other guy for the 8K range.
Let me guess it.
Yeah, you know it, Rick.
Oh, Oh, now I don't know if I know it. I thought it was gonna be Taylor Moore.
No.
Dean.
Okay, is it Thomas Dietrich?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Damn it.
Yeah. I would have. See, I should have guessed that first. I knew it.
Don't you hate when you do that?
I know.
It's the worst.
Yeah, I love the Thomas Dietrich results. I feel like we still don't really know who this guy is. What it is that Thomas Dietrich does so well, but the results just they're not lying. They're just very steady inside the top 35 seemingly every week. And his price may be a little high for that kind of ceiling, that kind of upside, but I'm very impressed when a player from the DP World Tour transitions to the PGA Tour and has similar success, right? The game travels. And I'm wondering if Thomas Dietrich is ready for a pop. So I'm more than happy to play a Thomas Dietrich. The only problem is you got to kind of choose him over like a Joel Damon or a Keith Mitchell, some of those other 9K, maybe even Justin Rose, some of those 9K guys that I like. And I would kind of put him right in the middle of the pack there. So I think he's a very viable option.
The sevens lead off with Brendan Todd, Scott Stallings, Davis Riley, Robbie Shelton. They go all the way down to Austin Eckert, Charlie Hoffman, who's sporting quite a beard these days, Dylan Fratelli, and Eric Barnes, who had the best weekend of anyone last week who's playing in the field this week.
He putted the lights out, right?
Well, I was going to leave that part out. Yeah, it was absolute faux. He gained 6 strokes putting on Sunday alone or Saturday alone.
Well, I think he opened his round with 4 or 5 straight birdies.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening again.
Yeah, a little worrisome to me. You want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So a couple guys that I really like here. One would be Nick Hardy has my interest, and this is very similar to the Ben Griffin thing. You just look at, and it goes against my common theme here, but Nick Hardy is proving himself to be a great ball striker, and he's just one kind of great putting week away from a really nice finish. And I think since he's shown this, basically this entire PGA Tour season, which started, back in September, he's gained strokes off the tee and approaching the green in all of them. Now he's basically lost strokes around the green and putting as well, which is why it varies for me. But I think there's still a lot of upside with Nick Hardy there. So I'm willing to go that direction. He's at 7,700. At 7,600, I'm also quite impressed with S.H. Kim, who I think has shown some not as consistent tee to green as Nick Hardy. He's shown a little more volatility, but he's definitely shown more prowess on the greens and around the greens as well. It's been very impressive on and around the greens. But I love what he does with his approach play. Has the ability to maybe not pop, but hit it really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, and you get some good results out of him. T4 in Vegas, T13 at the Sanderson, T12 at the Sony, T20 last week. I mean, that's all this season. That's more top 20s than a lot of guys have this year.
Yeah, he spatters them around. So it's really high upside, and I don't see him being extremely high owned. No. So I love that play. But there's one other that maybe two, but one other I love. And this would be, if there's ever a place for me to play Russell Knox, this is it.
Correct.
Right. And I'm not a Russell Knox guy. I know he's really good with his irons. I know that's what I always look for first. It's my favorite stat to look at. But this is a Russell Knox kind of golf course. He has a tied 7th, a tied 14th, a tied 15th, a number of other top 30 finishes here at Pebble Beach. I think the distance, which is where he loses strokes constantly, but he loses strokes off the tee because of his distance. Right. And you look here, Rick, when he plays Pebble Beach, he can gain strokes off the tee because distance isn't rewarded quite the same. So I really like that. And we're seeing some pale stuff around the greens, which is good for him.
Top 15s in 3 of his last 5 trips to this event for Russell Knox. Okay, Sia, you're up in the 7s. How would you like to break it down?
By the way, I am a Russell Knox guy, and I couldn't bring myself to put his name down in this range. And I
Wow.
think it's just the upside thing with him. It's just he never really cashes in. And I understand he's a low enough price where he doesn't have to top 10, but I think there's guys in this 7K range that can. I don't know. Maybe you just convinced me on Knox, but he was somebody I was thinking about, so I just wanted to mention that.
You're going to play him.
You're right. I am going to play him. The low 7K range, that's where I kind of love everybody. And that's always a dangerous, when you're like in love with all the guys in the low 7K range, most of them are probably going to miss the cut, like kind of a too good to be true type thing. But I'll just name a few guys here. Ben Taylor at 7,200. He has experience here. It's middling experience. But when I looked at his weighted metrics, the metrics I wanted to look at, they looked really good. Now he's coming off 2 missed cuts. So maybe, of the Bens, it's going to be Ben Griffin that gets all the attention, and the guy who just missed 2 cuts isn't going to get any. But I think Ben Taylor and the adjusted fit model, Rick, on RickRunGood.com has him way up there.
Yes, it does. And I'm proud of that model. I've been making some back testing adjustments to it, and I guess I could just pull it up, but it looks at, it looks at what's important to the golf course, which is something we see every single week. And then it looks at what golfers that however many rounds you want to look at. So the default is 36, and then looks at the skill set for each one of those golfers and just says, like, based on their normal stuff, what's a better fit for them. And Ben Taylor ranks pretty highly around this place. Matty Schmid, Mav McNeely, Ben Taylor's third, Harry Hall, Ben Griffin are the top 5. So yeah, I saw that as well.
And there's your guy, Greg, Keith Mitchell. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
The other two guys, I'll mention a few others. Grayson Sigg at 7,300. He finished 33rd here last year, which is telling. I mean, I think that's certainly solid. I think most people would think he doesn't have any experience here. But when I looked at the weighted metrics, they really checked out for him as well. Kevin Yu never played here. Weighted tee to green, greens in regulation, best in the field last 36 rounds. So that's pretty great. I think Kevin Yu has plenty of upside at 7,300. I'll mention as a pivot, I think Scott Piercy is interesting with his experience here. He's got pretty good experience. He's a lead around the green. He's more of a pivot play than anything. Troy Merritt I'm considering, but I probably won't get there with Troy Merritt. I think a lot of people will jump on Troy Merritt because of the experience. But it's Kevin Yu, Grayson Sigg, and Ben Taylor. Those are my favorite 3.
What do you think it would cost to sponsor his hat, Greg? Scott Piercy's hat is currently blank.
I have no idea. I couldn't even guess.
Why would you? That's just, he's doing it as a billboard, because why wouldn't you just wear a hat like any hat? This is actually just wearing a hat to say, I don't have a sponsor. You could buy this.
Yeah, probably.
Like,
right, he could wear the logo of his club, or
he could wear like the New York Jets logo, or like literally anything.
Right. But hey, this is a business, very much so. So
yeah,
but there's a lot of things that goes into those sponsorships. It's not just, well, we'll put it on the hat. I mean, many of these guys become partners, and they're doing corporate outings for them, and they're doing, in some cases, maybe commercials. So they can vary dramatically, and it's a lot more than just simply the logo on the hat.
Well, Scott Piercy does not have a logo on his hat, so he is apparently available if anybody is interested. 6s. Sure, let's do the 6s. I do not like this tier at all. Andrew Novak, Austin Cook, Doug Gim, Jimmy Walker, Kevin Tway, Luke Donald, Matty Schwab, not Matty Schmid. Actually, I believe he prefers Matthias Schwab. MJ Duffy and Marty Dow are all $6,900, all of them. The min price golfers at the very bottom of this. Who are the min price golfers? DA Points, Bo Van Pelt, 2 Gloves, Tommy Gainey, past champion Ted Potter Jr., outdueled Dustin Johnson around this place. Jeff Ogilvy. Wesley Bryan's 61. Wesley Bryan's like a YouTuber now. It's actually good stuff. All right, see ya. Good luck.
Yeah, Kyle Stanley also 61. Just throwing that out there. I think
Kyle Stanley, is he going to play this week? Was it last week he withdrew? Or the week before?
He did withdraw recently.
I can't remember.
Well, he's on the board, and he finished in the one of the last 2 times he played here. He finished, I think, 39. So I'm a Kyle Stanley guy.
That's if you would have said, Rick, guess exactly what Kyle Stanley's finishing position was, I would have said 39th.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I don't like this range much either, but there's a couple guys that do jump out to me a little bit. Henrik Norlander rated out kind of well for me, believe it or not.
Yeah, remember him.
He's had some flashes of decent play. The proximities looked pretty good with him. The other two guys I'll mention, Ben Martin. I actually think Ben Martin's a pretty solid play at 6,700. He can get going on approach. The approach game is bad, but it's trending upward as of late. Small sample size there. Good from the wedge and short iron proximities. Off the tee is the big weakness for Ben Martin, but shouldn't be a problem here. The last guy I'll mention is Sean O'Hare. His weighted metrics are solid as well, and the experience here is actually kind of solid. He's 6,600. Obviously, nobody's going to play either of these two guys. So I think they're decent plays here.
In case you were wondering, Sean O'Hare played in the Bahamas Great Exuma Classic at Sandals Emerald Bay, RIP Corrales Punta Cana Resort and Club Championship. This is now the new best name in all of golf, and finished T37. He was $9,400 in that Corn Ferry field, and then missed the cut last week. That's not so bad. It's pretty good. Okay, Greg, find me some value, please.
This is a tricky range. So I'll give you, how about 3 names?
Okay.
One, I feel this is just on a complete whim.
Perfect.
And I just have a feeling that things could go pretty well.
I love it already.
I don't like doing this at all. But at 6,500, Marcel CM.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Go
Now,
ahead. Tell me why.
Part of this is okay. Oh, all right. So there's a couple of nice events on the European Tour, which I like.
Yeah.
Partly, I feel like I'm basing the Open Championship on recent form. I'm looking in your Holy Grail right now, Rick, and it doesn't have the European Tour stuff in there.
You got to click for it.
What do I click?
So drop down more filters, and then click I think I defaulted out just so it doesn't have to load so much data at the start.
Got it.
And then you can add it in.
Yeah. So I'll add all those in.
Yeah.
Then they're here.
But you're I mean, he's played well on the European Tour. So
he has, and he's also played well here too. Look at his record here
at Pebble.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got a tied 18th.
All right, here we go. So here's Marcel Seam, I believe. Okay, Greg, he played here in 2015.
Yeah.
He finished T18.
This is recent.
That was 8 years ago.
Look, this is not a range where there's
let's stick with the actual recent stuff is good too. So he went 19th at the Afrasia Bank Meritus Open. That's a European Tour event that was played in mid-December. The week before that, the Alfred Dunhill Championship, T47. The week before that was the South African Open, T5. And then the week prior to that was the Joburg Open, T16. So he's played well on the European Tour. He's gained 8 strokes, 11 strokes in those 3 starts. It's almost entirely European Tour stuff, except from July where he played the Barracuda and the Barbasol. But he plays well. This isn't going to be that strong of a field.
No, and I think there's a realistic chance. Again, it's kind of a feeling. I like what he's done on the DP World Tour. I love the story from the Open Championship last year, which is why he's fresh in my mind. And I love his performance in 2015 here. So I think for all those reasons, he's a very playable option. I got another field play for you.
Okay.
All right. This is a stretch, but it's Vincent Norman.
Oh, do you know his story?
No.
Okay. This dude freaking smashes the ball. He's, I'm going to get this wrong. But he was like, Mark was telling me about this. I was hanging out with Mark on Thursday. And
is he the guy practicing in the winter in the snow?
I don't know about that. But he is, this is the kid who went to Florida State, right? For a year?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was playing like in the same conference as Mark in Georgia, and they had the COVID year. So he got one more year of eligibility, and he goes to Florida State. He's like better than John Pock there. And now he's coming out. He's got his tour card through the Corn Ferry, and this dude smashes it. Like he reminds me he's like a skinnier, like Joseph Bramlett Like he moves it, dude. It's actually pretty impressive to watch.
Joseph Bramlett's not a bad play this week either.
I completely agree with that.
I think he's very viable. But yeah, I had a pretty good feeling about Vincent Norman. Maybe it's just because I saw his name on the, as they're scrolling through the leaderboard last year. But all this stuff is okay, right? It's okay stuff. And there's not a lot of okay in this range.
He's very, very talented and very raw, and he's just got to kind of put it all together.
So I'm willing to go there. But there's one last guy.
Yeah, who's the third one?
If I may. The third one is, and I don't know how to feel about this, but it's Kevin Tway.
Boy.
Look, just check out these notes. Things are turning around for him.
We brought him up last week.
They're really turning around. I mean, you're starting to get a nice string of driving performance, starting to get a little smattering of better iron play. The results are starting to follow. The thing about him, like you say that name, I say the name, I get uncomfortable because results for so long have been so bad. But is Kevin Tway a guy that can win on the PGA Tour? Yes. It's just been a real rough patch. And I feel like he's on his way out of it. I think Kevin Tway is coming back to the light. And when his talent is on display, when he's playing to his full potential, he could be one of the better players in this field. There's a huge if there, and there's a reason he's in the $6,000 range. But I'm starting to see a positive upward trend that I think makes him worth the risk in the 6K range.
He has gained strokes off the tee in 5 straight, something he hasn't done in 18 months. He's gained strokes on approach in 2 straight and 3 of his last 5. Ball striking 4 out of 5. Around the green 3 out of 5. Putting 3 out of 5. So it is definitely way better than it was.
Right.
I don't know if it's good. It's pretty good. It's okay. It's fine. And it's way better than it was.
And I think it's a lot better than some of his peers price-wise.
That's probably true as well. David says he is far and away the best option in the 6K range. Which is seemingly a perfect segue to our strokes gain narrative portion of the show. If you came for legitimate golf analysis, you might as well stay for this because we are going to have a little bit of fun here. Okay, Troy, what do we got on tap? These are some lineups that you can make based on narratives around this week, and they have been submitted via Twitter to Sia. This is Ryan at Fantasy Bunker. Pebble Beach always makes me think of Pebbles from the Flintstones. Which one was Pebbles? That was the daughter?
The baby, I think.
Fred and Wilma's daughter?
I believe so, yeah.
And Bam Bam was the other one?
Oh, look at you with the dated references, Rick. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. So, Ryan says, here are a few other classic cartoons. Robbie Viss and Butthead Shelton. That's Robbie Shelton. Satoshi Man Kadira. He-Man. Scooby-Doo, Where Are Kevin You? The Web Simpsons. That's pretty good. G.I. Joel Damon. And Tom. Oh, I see what he did here. Okay. Yeah. Tom Yogi Bear.
The H is silent on that one, I suppose.
Yeah, but
by the way, this is one of 2 Flintstones lineups that was submitted, and I just didn't want to submit 2. So the other person, I think he's in the chat actually. Submit next week. It just happened to be 2 Flintstones ones. Weird.
Submit a Flintstones one next week. Who knows what'll happen?
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Now this is I believe it's a rap, right? So this is The Fresh Prince of Zach Blair. Do we know who wrote this?
It's John Markowski.
Oh, this is John Markowski, the GOAT. Okay, so I'll read you the first. Well, let's see. Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside brown. Scott Brown. And I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Zach Blair. In West Philadelphia, born and raised on a playground is where I spendrith most of my days, chilling out, mavin, relaxing, all cool, all shooting some b-ball outside of a school. When a couple of guys who were up to no good started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared and said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Zach Blair." I whistled for a cab, and when it came near, the license plate said fresh and had dice in the mirror. If anything, I would say that this cab was rare, but I thought, nah, forget it. Yo, Holmes to Zach Blair. Here we go. Savannah one. I pulled up to the Haas about 7 or 8, and I yelled to the cabby, "Yo, Holmes, smell you later." Looked at my kingdom. I was finally there to sit on my throne as the Prince of Zach Blair. Wow.
Rick, you did that well. I didn't think you were going to make it through the whole thing. That was excellent.
I didn't want to.
Very well.
I didn't want to. I wanted to read the first one and just refer everyone to John's Twitter. But I'm a Philly guy. I got into it. Like it was fine.
So that's just because Zach Blair is playing this week,
I guess. And it rhymes with Bel Air.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes, that was the big part of it.
Okay. Now, thank God we don't have to listen to me any longer, because I believe we actually have. Is this our third collab? Sia?
Third or fourth? Yeah, it's a good question. I got to go check. It might even be our fourth.
So this is a I don't know, a ditty, a song written by who?
Stevie Wonder, at least sung by Stevie Wonder. And
who made the Strokes Gained narrative lineup?
I actually made this one.
Oh, you made it. Oh my God. Okay.
I made it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. This is an entire family submission. Okay. So
That's
Sia has taken a Stevie Wonder song, Strokes Gained narratized it, and his wife Gigi is now gonna play it for us.
No Malnati, no flowers bloom, no Henrik Norlander within the month of June. But what it is Dylan made up of these two words that I must say to you. I just called to say Kevin you. I just called to say Callum Tarrant. I just called to say Kevin you. And I mean it from the bottom of James' heart.
Boom. So
Wow.
good. How about
Solid.
that?
Very, very solid. Proud of that.
Can we mention Kevin you?
I just called to say Kevin you.
Phenomenal.
So good. Gigi rocked it. See, I didn't know you wrote this. That's great.
Yeah, David usually writes them, but I took a shot at it. I was thinking AT&T. I think of phones like back in my day, guys, before you guys were born, we had phones that were connected to the wall in houses. It was crazy. And so there were like two big companies. It was AT&T, and I don't even know who the other one was. So that made me think of phone calls, old school style. So I just called to say I love you.
Well done to both of you, obviously. David, that was the fourth one. Rocket Man, Beach Boys, Beatles, and now Stevie Wonder, he says.
Oh, nice.
So you're almost at an album. When does the
right.
Strokes Gained narrative album come out?
Well, maybe Sam Harrop could help us with that, actually.
He just did. He was at the PGA show, and Kyle and Joe Musso interviewed him. I believe it might be on the feed right now. We just dropped like 15 interviews from the PGA show, and Sam's on there. I'm pretty sure.
I'm going to check it out. That's awesome.
So good.
Sweet. Well done, fam. Good job. You guys rocked it out. All right. That'll do it. Now we're going to do the mega preview pod at normal time next week, Sia. So your pick does not have to be in until, what is that? 5 p.m. Eastern. Is that okay?
It's still Kyle and I talked about it on Sunday. It's really whenever you want. This is the last week of the grace period.
I mean, I know tomorrow at 5 p.m. is a bit arbitrary, I guess.
Yeah. So whatever you feel is appropriate, Sia. This is your last week of that.
Also, I should have mentioned this 63 minutes ago. The one and done link is in the description for the fans. The fans can go get their vote in right now. I know they'll get it in on time because they always do. They're great at that. They never miss a deadline. Go get your pick in right now because we need it for tomorrow's show. Anything else we need to debate, or are we good?
Well, we closed that Strokes Gained narrative song with James Hahn. Just want to say in the 6K range, I don't hate it. Throwing that out there. Don't hate it.
Okay.
You know what James Hahn hates? everything on Twitter. Okay. Big thanks to producer Troy, does all the hard work behind the scenes. Nejad at Nejad on Twitter. Greg DuCharme with the Real GFD, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.